Hello, the topic we are discussing today is cognitive development of adolescents. The objectives of this module are: after reading this chapter, you will be able to answer the following questions. What are the cognitive developments that occur during adolescence? What are the different concepts of adolescents' cognitive development? And how adolescents' cognitive development is different from that of childhood cognitive development. With physical development, there is a remarkable change in adolescents' cognitive development. The changes of how adolescents think, reason, and understand can be more dramatic than their obvious physical changes. Adolescents are considered to be in the formal operational stage of Piaget, that is the highest level of cognitive development. Their thinking process is more realistic and is capable of abstract reasoning. Piaget suggested that people reach it at the start of adolescence around the age of 12. Let us look at Piaget's stage of formal operations. According to Piaget, the adolescent years are remarkable because youth move beyond the limitations of concrete mental operations and develop the ability to think in a more abstract manner. Piaget used the term formal operations to describe this new ability. Formal operations refer to the ability to perform mental operations with abstract, intangible concepts such as happiness or well-being, and to be able to estimate or describe the effect of these intangible concepts. Therefore, youth can now represent in their mind circumstances or events that they have never seen nor personally experienced. During adolescence, the developing teenager acquires the ability to think systematically about all logical relationships within a problem. The transition from concrete thinking to formal logical operations occurs over a period of time. Each adolescent progresses at varying rates in developing his or her ability to think in more complex ways. Each adolescent develops his or her own view of the world. Some adolescents may be able to apply logical operations to schoolwork long before they are able to apply them to personal dilemmas. When emotional issues arise, they often interfere with an adolescent's ability to think in more complex ways. The ability to consider possibilities or facts may influence decision-making in either positive or negative ways. Adolescent thought is more abstract, characterized by verbal problem-solving ability, increased tendency to think about thought itself. Thought is full of idealism and possibilities, and their thought is more logical. So the adolescent is able to think about fanciful problems which are not based in reality and realizes that logical rules can be applied to the ideas that violate reality. For example, take the problem of: if all green people live in red houses, are all people who live in red houses green? The concrete operational child would have difficulty getting beyond the fact that there is no such thing as green people. Whereas the adolescent who is in the formal operational stage would focus on applying logical solution to the problem regardless of the unrealistic content. During adolescence, their thought also becomes increasingly flexible and abstract. To solve problems, the adolescent uses logical processes in which all the possibilities in a situation are considered. In contrast to the concrete operational child, who under most circumstances can solve problems of classifications only in a real situation with the objects actually being present, the adolescent can consider a number of alternatives or hypotheses in a problem-solving situation and thinks of what could occur. In addition to this system of deducing consequences from a variety of alternate hypotheses, the adolescent can assimilate and combine information from a variety of sources. Rather than evaluating single factors in solving a problem as the concrete operational child would do, the adolescent at this stage is able to consider combinations of factors and simultaneous interactions of these factors which will affect the solution. Adolescents can deal with possibilities and predict future events. Their thinking is not confined to the concrete physical realities. Suppose children are asked a question of the form, cows are bigger than tigers and tigers are bigger than elephants. Which between the two, elephant or cow, are smaller? A formal operational adolescent will evaluate the logic of the statement to answer the question, which a concrete operational child cannot. This shows the abstract and hypothetical nature of adolescents' thought processes. The two important characteristics of thinking during adolescence are hypothetico-deductive reasoning and propositional thinking. Hypothetico-deductive reasoning is a problem-solving strategy that is, when faced with a problem, a formal operational thinker can formulate a general theory based on all possible factors and then deduce specific hypotheses from the general theory for further testing. One can test hypotheses in an orderly manner to examine which one works in the real world. Piaget and Inhelder in 1958 have demonstrated how children solve the pendulum problem. The pendulum solver is asked to figure out what determines how fast a pendulum swings. The choices are length of the string, weight of the pendulum, height of the pendulum release, force with which the pendulum is pushed. The adolescent approaches the problem very systematically. Like a scientist, they carry out investigations and they vary one factor at a time and observe its effect on the movement of the pendulum. As a result, they are likely to identify that the critical factor is the length of the string. This is an example of hypothetico-deductive reasoning. To illustrate the value of hypothetico-deductive reasoning, consider the following example. A teenage girl decided she would like to surprise her friends and prepare soup. Unfortunately, the first batch didn't turn out so well. In order to solve this problem, she would mentally review the ingredients she used and then the steps she took to prepare the soup. The girl will consider the variables that make the taste of the soup different, such as omitting a key ingredient or an improper ingredient. Next, she will change each individual variable and she will subsequently decide what she needs to do differently. After the second batch is finished, she will then evaluate if this problem has been solved or whether she needs to do something else. The second characteristic of thinking during adolescence is propositional thinking. Adolescents are able to employ propositional thought during the formal operational stage. Propositional thought is reasoning that uses abstract logic in the absence of concrete examples. Evaluating the logic of propositions or verbal statements without referring to the real-world circumstances. The statements are evaluated on their own merit even if they are contrary to the real-world knowledge. Consider the question, if dogs are called cats, can cats bark? The adolescent will answer yes to the question. They evaluate the logical validity of statement without being influenced by the concrete real-world knowledge. It is also the culture which influences the adolescent's use of formal operation. Adolescents with little formal education who live in isolation and technologically unsophisticated societies are less likely to use formal operations than formally educated persons in more sophisticated societies. According to information processing perspective, adolescents' cognitive abilities grow gradually and continuously. The information processing perspective sees changes in adolescents' cognitive abilities as gradual transformations in the capacity to take in, use, and store information. The maturation of frontal lobe helps the adolescent to process the information in a different way. Multiple progressive changes occur in the way adolescents organize their thinking, develop strategies to deal with new situations, sort facts, and advance in memory capacity and perceptual abilities. According to information processing perspective, there are two categories of changes noticed in adolescent cognition. First is structural change and second is functional change. Structural change includes changes in working memory capacity and increasing amount of knowledge stored in long-term memory. The capacity of working memory enlarges and helps adolescents to handle complex problems. Information stored in long-term memory can be declarative, procedural, or conceptual. Declarative knowledge is defined as the factual information stored in memory and known to be static in nature. It consists of all the factual knowledge a person can acquire, for example, the simple question as to who is Gandhiji. Procedural knowledge is the knowledge of how to perform or how to operate. It consists of all the skills a person has acquired. It is to know how something happens in a particular way, for example, how to drive a car. Conceptual knowledge cannot be learned by rote. It must be learned by thoughtful and reflective learning. It is to know why something happens in a particular way, for example, pondering upon the question as to why Earth revolves around the Sun. That is all about structural change. Now let us look at the functional change. Processes for obtaining, handling and retaining information are functional aspects of cognition, which include learning, remembering and reasoning. The most noticeable functional changes are a continued increase in processing speed and further development of executive functions such as selective attention, decision making and management of working memory. Why are these developments so important? For example, what is the role of decision making during adolescence? Adolescence is a time of increased decision making. Compared to children, young adolescents are more likely to generate options, examine the situation from a variety of perspectives, anticipate the consequences of the decisions, and consider the credibility of sources. Unlike Piaget's view that cognitive advances occur in stage-like spurts, information processing theorists emphasize gradual and continuous growth. The changes in cognitive abilities are gradual transformations in the way individuals take in, use and store information. According to this view, thinking advances during adolescence results from the ways people organize their thinking and develop new strategies. Critical thinking is one of the important concepts. A solid basis of fundamental skills is necessary for the development of these skills. Recent studies have shown that critical thinking increases with age but occurs less with junior high school students. Cognitive changes that allow improved critical thinking are increased speed and capacity of information processing, more breadth of content knowledge in variety of areas, increased ability to construct new knowledge combinations, a greater range and more spontaneous use of strategies. Information processing perspective asserts that one of the key reasons that mental abilities advance during adolescence is the growth of metacognition. Metacognition is the ability to think about one's own thinking process and their ability to monitor cognition. Adolescents are more capable of understanding their own mental processes. For example, adolescents plan their study materials depending on their memory capacity. The improvements in metacognitive abilities permit adolescents to comprehend and master school materials more effectively. These new abilities can make adolescents deeply introspective and self-conscious, the two characteristics which produce a high degree of egocentrism. Egocentrism in adolescent thinking. Adolescent egocentrism is a stage of self-absorption where the world is seen only from one's own perspective. Thus, adolescents are highly critical of authority figures, unwilling to accept criticism, and quick to find fault with others. Adolescent egocentrism helps explain why teens often think they are the focus of everyone's attention. Adolescent egocentrism leads to two distortions. One is imaginary audience, where adolescents think they are the focus of everyone else's attention, constructing elaborate scenarios about others' thoughts and intentions. Second is personal fables, the belief that the adolescent is unique and exceptional and their experiences are shared by no one else. The imaginary audience is the emergence of social self seems to be marked by a period of heightened self-consciousness during which adolescents are thought to become increasingly preoccupied with other people's concerns about their actions, thoughts and appearance. According to Elkin's theory, this belief results in increased self-consciousness, a tendency to anticipate the reaction of other people in relation to the self, and a feeling of being the focus of attention, regardless of whether a real audience exists or not. Therefore, teens may mistakenly believe that everyone around them is watching and judging them, scrutinizing their every move, and as a result of which they become painfully self-conscious. The concept of imaginary audience helps parents to understand why their teenagers spend more time in front of the mirror or become increasingly embarrassed over a seemingly minor mistake. Secondly, the personal fable is a related construct which denotes adolescents' convictions of their own personal uniqueness, giving rise to the sense of being special. Youth may feel exceptionally unique and different from other people, including their own peers. Piaget also called this the personal fable. Many teens believe they have unique abilities or conversely unique problems, different from anyone else in the world. Some youth feel as though they are better, smarter and stronger than others. Let us look at language and moral development during adolescence. By the ages of 16 to 18 years, the average young person knows about 80,000 words. Adolescents are driven by reflective and abstract thought. They can define and discuss abstract words such as love and happiness. They are increasingly complex grammatical constructions and more conjunctions in their sentences. They are more proficient in social perspective talking, the ability to understand other person's point of view and speak accordingly. And they show improved ability in varying language style according to the situation. They speak different language with peers and differently with adults. According to Marcel Denisi, adolescent speech constitutes a dialect of its own, which he called it as pubilect, the social dialect of puberty. Pubilect helps in strengthening group identity and shuts outsiders out. Now let us look at moral development. Morality refers to the way people choose to live their lives according to a set of guidelines and principles that govern their decisions about what is right and what is wrong and good versus evil. As youth's cognitive, emotional and social development continue to mature, their understanding of morality expands and their behavior becomes more closely aligned with their values and beliefs. Therefore, moral development contributes to the evolution of these guiding principles and is demonstrated by ability to apply these guidelines in daily life. As we have already studied, Kohlberg developed a 6-stage theory of moral development, which he grouped into 3 higher order levels of development. Kohlberg's theory of moral development, the first stage is the pre-conventional level, second, the conventional level, and the third, the post-conventional or principled level. Each level is then further subdivided into 2 stages to make a total of 6 stages. Kohlberg believed that by early adolescence, most youth have reached the mid-level of moral reasoning called the conventional level. At this level, morality is determined by social norms, that is, morality is determined by the rules and social conventions that are explicitly or implicitly agreed upon by a group of people. These rules and customs function to serve the best interests of the group's majority, while simultaneously providing a structure that maintains social order and limits discord among group members. The conventional level is further subdivided into Stage 3 and Stage 4. Stage 3 is called the morality of interpersonal cooperation. At this stage, moral decisions are made by anticipating how this decision would be judged by other influential members of the group. Because youth at this stage wish to be considered as a good person and judged in a favorable light, their moral decisions will be based on whether or not their decisions would win the approval of significant people or those who matter to them. The next stage within the conventional level is called the social order maintaining orientation. At this stage, morality is determined by what is best for the majority of the people. Furthermore, moral decisions reflect an understanding that majority of people benefit from a social order that fosters harmonious relationships among group members. At this stage, youth understand that the laws are intended to serve everyone's best interest and believe that societies function best when everyone strictly adheres to the law. These youth will begin to compare their daily decisions and the consequences of those decisions to the larger society's moral code. Although few significant differences have been identified in the cognitive development of adolescent boys and girls, it appears that adolescent boys and girls do differ in their confidence in certain cognitive abilities and skills. Adolescent girls tend to feel more confident about their reading skills and social skills than boys, and adolescent boys tend to feel more confident about their athletic and math skills. In summary, from the concrete thinkers, adolescents are able to think in abstract manner. They are able to analyze situations logically in terms of cause and effect and to entertain hypothetical situations and use symbols such as metaphors imaginatively. This higher level of thinking allows them to think about the future, evaluate alternatives, and set personal goals for themselves. The new capacities helps adolescents to engage in the kind of introspection and mature decision making that was previously absent and beyond their cognitive abilities. To encourage positive and healthy cognitive development in the adolescent, discuss with adolescents about a variety of topics, issues, and current events. Encourage them to share different ideas and thoughts with others, and encourage them to think independently and develop their own ideas. Also, assist adolescents in setting their own goals and in re-evaluating poorly made decisions for themselves. Reinforce adolescents to think about possibilities for the future. Provide positive rewards to adolescents for making well thought out decisions.